believe me, there's a lot more reforms we need to talk about, put in place that should go forward.
I have zero tolerance for corruption.
The king should be the umbrella to all the integrity.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the latest episode of Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for your top stories that made the headlines and more. My name is Amalina Kamal.
And I'm Hazwin Hassan, and in this episode, we'll be discussing news surrounding the week's coverage of Malaysia's 16th Yang di-Pertuan Agong, as well as the appointment of His Majesty Sultan Ibrahim Sultan Iskandar as the 17th King of Malaysia.
Yes, of course, and we will be diving into all the constitutional aspects surrounding the reports and what had transpired over the week. But without further ado, I would like to welcome first on the couch with me, I have Najmuddin Najib, New Straits Times Associate Editor. Welcome, Naj.
Hi, glad to be here.
Glad to have you as well. And our special guest, we have Constitution expert Professor Madya Dato Dr. Syam Rahayu Abdul Aziz. Welcome, Dato.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
This week we saw a lot of farewells, a lot of open discussion before the departure ceremony. The former king and queen also hosted a private session with members of the media in which Naj was there. But of course I want to understand first, Naj, maybe you can take us through the whole experience, how our former king and queen fared, especially when the members of the press were open enough to, send out questions, and how open were they to also receive those questions?
Yeah, I think the interview took place on January the 3rd at Istana Negara. It was a very intimate affair. They limited it to about 16 media personnel. I think the event was particularly notable because of the openness and frankness that Al Sultan Abdullah Tuanku displayed during the whole session. So while some of the questions were standard questions, regarding what was your time like, what was various human interesting parts, but he did not hesitate. Tuanku did not hesitate to tackle the more difficult questions, such as handling 4 prime ministers in 5 years, the concept of the unity government, how was it floated, was it his idea all along, and what were his views on, say, the government of the day with regards to fiscal responsibility. So all those, he handled all those in a very frank manner, So it was pretty much a no holds barred interview, and he even encouraged us to basically, look, ask more. What do you want to know? Ask more.
Right. And among the key, I suppose, concerns, or at least suggestions that was raised, is that for the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's role to be more visible on the international front, and this is only because currently the king's role is only matters of, like, say,
state funerals
as well as coronations, and nothing of sorts when it comes to state affairs. When I say state affairs, he suggested like environmental affairs, more towards the CSR level. So, Dato, I just want to understand, in your view, would expanding the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's role into these areas, implicate our constitutional principles in a negative way?
Thank you for the questions. We understand that Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the supreme head of the federation, is the sovereign, the highest authority of the nation, and of course the constitution provides for some duties that must be performed or can be performed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, but there are few matters that should be performed by the government, because there's a division of powers between the two. But I believe bringing Malaysia to the international community is a duty of the rights of the sovereign head of the federation, as well as the responsibility of the government. I don't think there's specific provisions which provides for which refrains to refrain the Agong from representing the nation. That it could be possible. Furthermore, is the duty of the supreme head of the federation to ensure that Malaysia is known by the international community, and to ensure that we are a successful and prosperous country. So I think the constitution does not prevent the sovereign head of the state or the sovereign head of the federation to participate in the international affairs. But of course, in doing so, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong or the Supreme Head shall be assisted by the government, by His Majesty's government. So of course, when they visit outside Malaysia, they will be accompanied by representative of the government, so that it will be coordination between the views of the Supreme Head and also the government of the day.
And I think,
and I think the young Sultan Abdullah at the time was also during the interview when he raised that, and that was unprompted to say. And it wasn't based on a question; it was something that he himself raised. Now, but just to frame it into context, now he had said that the role of the Yang Tuan Agong can be expanded because there is so much more that the king can do for the country, instead of just being a figurehead, representative at state funerals and coronations. I think he cited the example of his participation, his attendance at the COP28, United Nations Climate Change Conference, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think he took a keen interest in that, and I think he went to great pains to stress that when it comes to matters pertaining the nation's finances or politics, that is something that maybe that is not for the Agong lah, Tapi kalau when it comes to you won't say low risk, tapi less serious matters such as maybe climate conference apa semua kan, and these are things that maybe he can represent. So he said this is not something new. Other royal houses around the world also send their members of royal family, right, to attend on behalf. For example, the late Queen Elizabeth used to attend maybe European conferences and all that. So it can be done similarly lah. But he did of course say that he does not have any means of elaborating on how this can be done.
Right.
But he was hoping that it can somehow be reviewed and considered.
Is his concern primarily that the king has merely just a ceremonious presence in state affairs? Is that why he's suggesting this, do you think?
Yeah.
Because to add to that, right, because in the same address, he also mentioned about raising awareness in the importance of the institution, having more young people to understand why there is a Yang di-Pertuan Agong.
Most important is the monarchy should be felt, their presence should be felt. So in order for the people in general to feel that there's the existence of the monarchy, of course certain significant duties must be assigned, or legally speaking, the constitution also provides so, assigning duties to the His Majesty, as well as the consort. The Raja Permaisuri also play great role to the nation. When we say that ceremonials, of course there are certain matters that will be is considered as ceremonials, but there are prime matters we consider as important, such as the position of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong as the supreme commander of the armed forces, and the Yang di-Pertuan Agong or His Majesty also will be the prime authority who is vested with the executive authority of the nation, as explained in the federal constitution itself.
Do you think this sort of responsibility should also align with the correct criteria of a king and queen? We don't want to be talking about anyone in specific, but to handle matters of even that's not necessarily politics or finances. You need to be very well versed in certain subject areas, like for instance, matters of mental health. I just want to understand your thoughts.
Yes, of course. I think from the history also we should understand and we should know our king. So because let's say in the process, in the independence process, when we study the historical documents, it seems that it's unimaginable how our king those days presented the ideas of what the future nation should be, what should be included in the constitution. It has not been very clearly exposed to the people. We need to explore more on the matters, and we know that our kings were trained in many areas. They've been in the security, of course, in the health of the general public. As we know, also our former Raja Permaisuri also is very interested in the health for women, for instance. So is it time for us to acknowledge through the historical backgrounds of our kings also? Few of them or many of them graduated from the law schools, so they've been contributed a lot in the making of the constitution. It's amazing when I read some constitutional documents earlier, when we see that how the views of the Royal Highnesses have been considered and now being included in the constitution. For instance, what should be the functions of the states? What is the division of powers between the federal and the states? How much powers that should be given to the states or to the federal is also parts of the contributions from the kings or the rulers of the states. So it's time for us to acknowledge the knowledge or the intelligence or the what we call the education that our king went through, and they studied a lot of matters, and they even recognized by the international community.
And I think it's very possible to remain apolitical, because I think that's the other concern, right? To be neutral. They must be seen as above politics. So seeing from other countries that have had this in place already as part of their constitutional monarchy, we can do this. We can do this whilst having our royalty above politics, remain apolitical, right?
Yes, of course. That is the first main criteria of a ruler, and the monarch should be free. In our country, we are practicing constitutional monarchy. There are various types of constitutional monarchy in the world. There are monarchy which involves in politics, but our constitution clearly spells that no monarchy can be involved in politics. And even the recent amendment to the constitution, few positions like the king or the rulers of the states and the consort cannot vote in the general election. This is to indicate, it's clearly crystal clear that they cannot be involved in politics. They should be impartial, but it doesn't mean that they cannot emphasize on their opinion. They have their own views, but we as people of the country, when let's say our king give some views on certain matters, we should not relate this to any political party agenda. Probably the king has his own His Majesty has his own opinion on the subject matter, and of course the king will have more eagle-eye view on certain matters as compared to us as a subjects.
Right. And that eagle-eye view, I think, is quite visible, especially during the past 5 years where we had multiple changes of prime minister. So going into the whole, constitutional aspect of governance as well and political stability, as you mentioned, Naj, during that sitting with the former king and queen, it was like a no-holds-barred session. And Al Sultan Abdullah did mention that people need to give our current administration enough time to prove its effectiveness. What were the reactions from the press at the time when the king actually said it out loud?
I think it came as no surprise, because that was something that His Majesty had stressed on before. The importance of political stability and how it relates to financial stability, how it relates to economic development and growth.
Which he touched on as well.
Yes, of course, yeah. But what was interesting, I thought, was his very frank take on the country's financial position, such as one of the things that he mentioned. It was quite amusing in the sense that he said, in his 5 years as with regards to the country's finances, when Muhyiddin, when he was his first prime minister was Dr. Mahathir. Yeah, when Dr. Mahathir came to menghadap, according to Sultan Abdullah lah, Dr. Mahathir said, the country has no money, our finances are tight, So okay, so we have to drop certain projects. Okay, understood. And then when Tan Sri Muhyiddin came in, Sri Muhyiddin said, no, we have money, we're going to do some other things. It's like, okay, alright. So after that, Ismail Sabri came in, he said, yeah, we have money, we're going to do some other things as well. He said this also reflected in the ever increasing national budget, So he said, okay, I thought the finances were in good hands again. And then according to Astagfirullah, so he said, when Anwar came in, he said, do we have money? And I said, yes, we have some. So, so that reflects like you said, going back to the eagle eye view, this is not something that we are privy to, It's only something that the His Royal Highness can share with the public if he so deems lah.
Dato', I just want to understand, how does the Malaysian Constitution actually address in ensuring Malaysia can maintain its political stability while factoring in the king's role in this, if whatever had transpired over 5 years is not already clear to some of our audience watching.
But as we have seen in the many incidences most important who is the Prime Minister shall be determined by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong in his judgment. But then, of course, we also listen to the former king when His Majesty said that it is not actually discretion of the Agong, but it will be supported by the political parties who will give their support or their opinion on who shall be the Prime Minister. Of course, the Constitution says that in order to be appointed as a Prime Minister, one should be a member of the Dewan Rakyat, and he must likely in the minds on the judgment of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is likely to command the confidence of the majority members of the Dewan. So, in determining who has the confidence in the Dewan, is the discretion powers of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is mentioned by the Constitution. But how it's being translated into the practice, that's what the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the former Agong, said that is actually supported by the political parties who will recommend the names to the king before His Majesty can decide who shall be appointed. So most important is that the discretionary powers given to the Agong is to ensure the stability of the country. And similarly, when it's claimed that the Prime Minister has lost the confidence of the majority, the Agong also has to decide whether the person has actually lost the confidence. So this, as what we have seen, what transpired in the occasions, the changing of the Prime Minister, the Agong calling all members of the House Representative to appear to have
determine the support
to determine the support. Which one? Every members of Parliament has to give to the Agong.
Yes.
Who's the person that he. So another occasion where the Agong call only the party leaders, let's say after the 15 general election, when there's hung of Parliament.
Right.
So at the time so we can see the two situations of the political instability, at least two situations. One is when people claim, or there's a claim that the Prime Minister had lost the confidence, and secondly is when the Prime Minister also tendered resignation, and apparently we have the results of the 15th election, which no party can determine as the majority of the members. So because of the provisions of the Constitution, we find that the powers of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong is a bit wide. To me, it's wide, or otherwise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong cannot decide and who should be the Prime Minister. So the political instability is saved in a way by the discretionary powers of the Agong.
And it is a tough position to be in.
And it happened few times at the state level, but it becoming more serious at the federal level because it's a bit more important.
Well, I think during the interview, Sultan Abdullah took great pains to stress on the importance of the Conference of Rulers, his fellow brother kings. So he said that I may be the Yang Tuan Agong, But to make a decision, I will always consult with my fellow rulers as well. So he's drawing upon the collective wisdom of the rulers themselves, where every decision is made with their after consulting them, and then he comes to a decision based on what they had discussed. So, and I think there is no denying that Sultan Abdullah has performed admirably throughout this whole political crisis. There are so many times when things would have gone horribly wrong had he not aided by the conference rulers and his brother kings to exercise his wisdom and judgment to steer this country through. And I don't think anyone can deny that he has done a fantastic job with these regards.
To say the least, it's been an eventful 5 years of his reign, really, compared to his predecessors, right?
He's he's kept it well composed throughout
Absolutely.
the whole time.
Yep.
Now, with him stepping down, our former king and queen stepping down, and His Majesty Sultan Ibrahim Sultan Iskandar, King of Malaysia, stepping up as the current 17th Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Tan Sri Lam Tai actually said that Malaysians do look forward to his reign, anticipate stability as well as economic progress. Now, Dato', I just want to understand as well, when it comes to Sultan Ibrahim, he's also a particular individual that has expressed that he will, conduct a crackdown or support crackdowns on corruption. How do you think our royal institution would fare moving forward, given the, scopes that they're supposed to fall under?
First and foremost, the constitutional monarchy has to act within the boundary of the constitution as well. But the main duty of the king, as I said earlier, that His Majesty is the supreme head of the federation, and His Majesty's main duty is, of course, to make sure that the political, culture, economics, and of course the identity of the nation at a stable situation, and fighting bribery or corruption is the interest of both the monarchy and also the government of the day. And of course both parties working together, involvement of the king is probably important in the sense that the king shall always give advice to the people. And another thing is that SPRM, or the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, is also something, in my opinion, maybe declared as a royal institution like the PDRM, Polis Diraja Malaysia, that could be make the SPRM more independent and is more likely to be under the purview of the royal institution. I think this is something that we should explore more on, if we were to give the chance for the monarchy to participate, then it should be the umbrella of the king should be the umbrella to all the integrity and also corruption, to fighting the institution, fighting the corruption.
Do you think that macam, for example, like Sultan Ibrahim, when he announced that, I have zero tolerance for corruption, it could be a way of say stirring up the hornet's nest sikit, such as setting the tone for the government, right? In the sense that, I will not tolerate corruption, and I think you shouldn't too.
Yeah, of course. But then, as we have seen, the government also is trying to, since the beginning of this current government.
Of course.
So I think if they both work together, then that we have already a framework, as you said, Naj. To have a framework of how the country should fight the corruption, then this should be a good one for our new king.
Sultan Ibrahim has also been very outspoken, especially in the stance against racial discrimination. I think where we also, I think in the past few years, we've seen Sultan Ibrahim personally, curbing, racial rhetorics quite well. I just want to understand this. How might the king actively contribute in fostering this sort of unity on a national level now? What sort of key measures must the king take into consideration in ensuring racial prosperity for Malaysians in general?
I think that shouldn't be too difficult, because it is something that all the young Di-Pertuan Agongs had propagated anyway, and Sultan Ibrahim should be no different lah. It's just that the manner in which it's delivered, I suppose, will remain to be seen, because he is known as a no-nonsense individual. He will state his bit, but I think that is probably what the country needs, somebody who speaks his mind and takes no nonsense with regards to what he believes in, and racial unity and racial prosperity is something that all the other Yang Agongs have, of course, expanded on, so I think in his role as the 17th Yang Agong, it will give Sultan Ibrahim an even bigger platform actually to share his views with regards to issues that matter to his heart.
The king duty or the king functions in matters of unity. Okay, the purpose of having a king as the head of the federation is to unite all people. That we know we have various dimensions of differences from religion, culture, the origin and all. So it's the duty, it is in fact a duty of the king to make sure that all kinds of differences becomes unity, becomes united. Not only in terms of the ethnics of the people, but also the unity of all states in the federation. Probably previously we listened to some political campaign like one state should be free from the federation, or they want to go out from the federation. This is another dimension of unity, because if you look at the experience in the world, that many countries, many federal kind of government or confederation of government, there are problems of this uniting all the states. That we should have law to control of these differences among the states, and the only law that applicable now we have Sedition Act. So I want to say that the Constitution provides provide a clear direction on what is the functions and duties of the king in terms of the unity among the nations and also among the states that forming the federation.
I just want to understand, is there a reason why the Yang Di-Pertuan Agong title is dropped? Maybe Dato', you have an explanation to this? Like, is it normal for every king and queen to have their own personalized name,
address?
Any king or any ruler become the Yang Di-Pertuan Agong, they are at liberty to choose their own names. Then sometimes, of course, like Sultan Abdullah previously, also they used a new title when His Majesty became the Yang Di-Pertuan Agong. Of course, it's the liberty of the Yang Di-Pertuan Agong, but then the title like Kebawah Duli Yang Maha Mulia Seri Paduka is a must for the Yang Di-Pertuan Agong. For the rest of the names, it's up to them.
Like Sultan Kelantan and Sultan Muhammad the Fifth.
Sultan Muhammad the Fifth changed that name when they take the throne of the Yang Di-Pertuan Agong.
Right. Just a little fun fact for our audience that's quite interesting. Hazwin, do you have any other questions before we wrap up this particular segment?
Not particularly, but I would like to say yes. I look forward to the new king's more sort of apparent involvement in uniting the people of the country, not just particularly with his own home state, which I think everyone is very aware of how Johor is very proud of their royal family and institution there. But I really do want to see the 17th Malaysian king be able to step in more into that role and really see more unity among the races, because we are going through quite some challenging times, and there's a lot of tension between the races. I mean, let's admit it, it's not particularly the best times racially, so I think the king can step in as its own sort of, being above
voice
politics,
of reason of sorts,
being above politics, and step in and as its own institution and put some sense into the people, knock some sense into the people, especially the politicians, if I may.
Last words from our guests before we wrap up the show.
The Constitution provides powers and functions of the king. Therefore, when we have the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, by its name, the one who is made Lord, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, is the most important throne, which that can be used or that can be utilized for the purpose of stability of the nation. I have to mention that we have 33 more years to achieve 100 years of independence. That is not too long, 33 years, where the generation as the leaders at the time when we arrive 100 years of independence now, they are now in the university. So it's the duty of the king also, I think, to develop the people to address issues that will be faced by our nation, our Malaysia, at the time when we reach 100 years of independence, is a mark of civilization. I think we should start from now. And His Majesty probably the right person to begin with, because Johor, the Johor royalty has a long history about international relations, developing the culture and identity of the nation. I think we should assist His Majesty in the sense, as a people, that we must be responsible citizens and develop the nation as one at the beginning to achieve 100 years of independence.
I think the main takeaway that we have from Sultan Abdullah's 5-year reign is the greater attention being paid to the role of the monarchy itself, or the role of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, having been an individual who had overseen 4 prime ministers in 5 years, how he has steered the country through the various changes in government, and also his views on the importance of let's say expanding the role of the monarchy. I think it has been an eventful period which has forced a lot of nations to look at the role of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong as more than just a ceremonial role, and I think his call for it to be studied and to be learned by the younger generation also is timely, and I think that sets up nicely. This whole 5 years has set up nicely for the role of Sultan Ibrahim to come in, and I think greater attention will be paid from now on.
That's a nice way of looking at how our royal institution is able to help assist in shaping a better Malaysia, with opportunities and stability that we have always aspired. Once again, I just want to wrap up this segment by thanking my guest here that's on the set, Datuk Dr. Shamrahai Abdul Aziz. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being here. Najmuddin Najib, thank you so much for sitting in. And Hazwin will be joining me for the next segment, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the latest episode of Beyond the Headlines. Now, big news on the global corruption front. Malaysia's Corruption Perception Index (CPI) for 2023 results revealed that we have actually progressed, with the country securing 50 points, a 3-year improvement from the previous year. Now, Transparency International Malaysia unveiled the CPI results positioned Malaysia at the 57th place, a climb from its 61st position the year before.
However, a worrying trend looms large, notably with a previously reported discharge not amounting to an acquittal or DNAA in the Yayasan Akal Budi case involving the Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, casting shadows on Malaysia's current standing. Now, Transparency International Malaysia acknowledges Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim's commitment to enhancing governance and setting a national target to break into the top 25 of the global rankings by 2033. However, the watch group is calling for more than just commendation, urging the government to articulate a concrete plan to realize this ambitious goal.
Yes, and additional concerns were also raised with regards to the transparency in mega projects. But before we dive into it a little bit deeper, I would like to expand this discussion and welcome our guest here on the set, Pushpan Murugia, CEO of the Centre to Combat Corruption and Cronyism, C4 Centre. Welcome, Pushpan.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Pushpan, first things first, the CPI index, how important is it in terms of viewing the country to its country's position on the corruption index?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to first perhaps understand the context of it. We tend to look at ranking as another indicator as well, plus the scoring. But from our point of view, it's always important to look at just the score, which is 50 now. There's an improvement of 3 points, which is a positive improvement, a positive perception. Now, why I say ranking is not too important for us is basically because there are some countries will not be calculated. So the rank can go up and come down arbitrarily depending on how is it. But the most important thing we need to look at is the score, which is 50. And I think that 3 points increase gives a little bit of hope that there is some form of improvement or there's some development in terms of the fight against corruption. But again, as what TI has mentioned, we C4 also like to also caution that 3 point alone, it's nothing to be really great about, because we have to also understand that the tabulation of points that came out is up to 22, 23 mid-level. So whatever happened after that, especially your DNA issue, which is Zahid, could also effectively reflect back the perception in the coming year. So again, we need to be very careful how we want to look at the perception index. Yes, it gives us confidence. It gives us a bit of confidence from the investors coming in as well.
Yep.
But we also have to be very caution how we want to go forward in terms of using those data.
Right.
Right.
And there have been some suggestions in elevating Malaysia's CPI ranking, or at least, indirectly the score. The recommendations here include expediting the separation of powers between the Attorney General and the Public Prosecutor, along with terminating political appointments within government-linked agencies.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
My question is, where do we start? Because we have so many things we need to reform.
Okay.
That is but a bigger pile of reforms. Now, those are keys. You also look at MECC as well. You need to bring them to a situation where they're truly independent.
Yeah.
At this point in time, they parked under the Prime Minister's Department. So you have that conflict of issue as well.
Yes.
You have so many other reforms. Whistleblower amendments, ombudsman, There are so many institutional reforms and also legal reforms we need to put in place to truly reflect an independent institution in the country. Now, saying that, is that a good start? Yes. Separation of AG and PP is vital, because now AG is a political appointee. He is a politician. And the PP reports to the AG. So there is no independence there. So the first call is to at least make that PP independent and away from the AG. AG basically is the attorney for the government. So he works advising the government, the executives. The public prosecutor's job is to prosecute criminals. So we cannot have them communicating together or linked together. They're separated. That is one key element. That's where you can see the institutional or the judicial part of the program or part of the points will increase significantly in that context. Yeah. On the other point also of the GLC's one.
Right, correct.
In Malaysia, this is a nice topic to talk about, because we don't really appreciate the fact that Malaysia is a very unique country that has an ecosystem that actually supports very large number of GLCs. Now, there were some figures floating around for the last 2 years, but the figure is around 42% of the market in Malaysia is controlled by GLCs. Now, most not possible. We have got, CIMB Bank, some of those. But if you look at the terminology of GLCs or GLICs, it's just not those. You have statutory bodies.
Right.
You have state statutory bodies. You have got listed companies. And the part that most people don't look at in terms of ecosystem of GLC is the Sendian Berhads. There are a lot of statutory bodies that has got subsidiary companies.
I see.
That is where the ecosystems of corruption is floating inside the whole ecosystem. What happens is there's no accountability for this Sendian Berhad because it's privately held.
Owned, yeah.
Yep. So in that context, if you're looking at GLC alone, not just the appointments of politicians should be stopped, you need to have a total reform or look at an entire ecosystem. From level 1 right up to levels 4, 5, 6. There's so many levels. SPVs, joint ventures. These are all part of the government machinery or government companies.
Right.
So if we don't look at it holistically, you have a big problem of where the money is going. You can never identify where the money is going. Let me give you another example. Look at LCS scandal.
Okay.
There's so many layers. You have got public listed, you have got bank, financial institutions, then you've got small SPVs are involved. So where do you track the corruption? Where do you track the money flow? Who handles what? Who gives the authority? So these are larger conversations we need to look at in terms of if fighting corruption, JLC issues is a big topic. And you might want to have a session on this alone, just to look at how JLCs are contributors to corruption as well in this country.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose that is one area that's causing a major setback. I mean, a CPI target is one thing, but I mean, we're not. This is not like a race to get great scores, right?
Correct.
Corruption should be a matter that should be looked seriously beyond numbers. So I just want to understand it realistically. How can the administration look into the grey areas without overselling the aspirations?
Okay. Really glad you brought this up. Let me just try to have a good conversation first. Can I ask you a question? In your mind, corruption in Malay is what? What do you say?
Rosak.
No, corruption.
Pecah amanah.
Okay, some more. The common word they use in Malaysia is rasuah.
Rasuah.
Right.
Right, rasuah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you translate rasuah back into English, it doesn't say corruption. What it says is bribery. Now, one of the grey areas in Malaysia is our definition of corruption is extremely narrow. It's only confined to bribery.
Bribes,
I
right.
give somebody, I take some benefit, or I use the agent to do it.
As a form of inducement.
Inducement,
right?
that's it. So it's very narrow, and it's always what we see for defined as petty corruption, where the policeman, the immigrations, you give officer to hide evidence, or you give to get it from summons. This is what it's targeted for, in our opinion. But in Malaysia, we have a bigger problem, which we call as grand corruption. Grand corruption is something that is happening from 1980s to today. If you notice, you have got so many scandals, PKFZ, LCS, you name it, Bank Bumi Putra, millions and billions, Perwajah Steel. But has anybody been caught and put in jail? None. Only person that has been caught in jail in Najib through one MDB and SRC case. Correct? Only one, because apparently there's a direct link to the money flow and all that. But over the years, the gap is there. The definition of corruption is so narrow that the politicians or the people in power or the elites, they know how to use the whole ecosystem to get away with profiteering. What did Muhyiddin Yassin say when he was discharged? As far as I know, I have not committed any crime under any law. He knows
the law
the
and
law.
the loopholes.
But if you look at the holistic of the issue, there were issues of nepotism, there were issues of cronyism.
Yes.
So that goes back to the point of the gaps. One is the definition of the grey areas of the law is the definition. Second, the enablers. Now, even in our CPI from Transparency International, enablers of corruption are not considered as an indicator. Just to let you guys know, it's not considered as an indicator. But grand corruption are perpetuated using enablers of corruption, for example, cronyism, conflict of interest, abuse of power. These are the mechanisms that leads to, in Malaysia's case, grand corruption happening over and over and over and over again. So the discourse, first we have to understand as a public or as a community that's involved in trying to solve this problem, is to first look at how we define corruption. We need to first expand our mind to understand what corruption actually is. It is not bribery, you give me something, I give something. It's no longer that. It's an ecosystem that perpetuates such a huge amount of money that's going out of the country and reduces our development. So that's one. The other aspect of more tangible thing that the government can do, they have actually looked at the National Anti-Corruption Plan, which was done in 2018. We were involved as one of the stakeholders. It was an excellent plan that laid out the next 5-10 years, the plan to actually reform the country, the institutions, parliamentary, executive. So it's a very nice plan in place. But C4's concern is that there has been delay in actually trying to implement the full scale of it. So one of the ways to actually improve the score, or in fact fight corruption per se, is to quickly look at NACP, which they have targeted to revamp it as national anti-corruption strategy for the next 5 years or 10 years, to use that as a benchmark to actually do those reforms as soon as possible and put those mechanisms, oversights, institutional independence, everything in place.
Why 10 years?
No, I mean, it's just a rough indicator,
Right.
but it should be a longer term plan. But we already have the NACP from 2018. So we're supposed to end by last year, completed everything.
Right.
So if you say you want to extend this, okay, fine. Maybe there's so many things to be done with all the period of where we had few governments in place, you know. Okay, let's extend it maybe another 5 years or 3, 4 years, 5 years to actually implement those things. Now, implementing all of that will actually have significant impact not only on CPI scoring, but let me tell you, your investors from international community will come in. Personally, what I feel is investors don't want to come into Malaysia is because one is they always say is political insecurity. That's one, yes, instability. But also the institutional integrity of our institutions are not there. So let's say, for example, a big corporation comes to Malaysia, has a business dealing with a politician, okay? It goes sour. Will they have confidence that they can actually go after the politician? If you look at DNA from Nadia's case. So again, that gives the lack of, or the doubt whether if my interests can be actually protected by the ecosystem or the justice system. That's one of the considerations for people coming into Malaysia. So these reforms help build that confidence. And bring this confidence, you bring economic growth, you bring investors, you bring quality into the country, and then you bring a lot of benefits as well. So I think that are the plans we look at, the NACP and NCS, how to execute that in the next 5 years.
But if I may, and this might seem to be on the contrary to what you've just explained, we don't really have a problem of getting investors to come in, foreign investors, because recently we had an economist and we also had a legal expert on saying the fiscal policy, that's more important, and that's what's going to draw and be more appealing to investors.
Political
not so much instability is secondary. And so perhaps...
Okay, let me respond to that in more of practical terms. When Anwar Prime Minister has gone over to US, China and all that, right? He has said that, we're bringing investors with 170 billion MOU signs. The keyword is MOU. We do not know whether it's actual investments. Now, what got me concerned is the fact that, first of all, I'm saying that the corruption issue is one of the factors, okay? You have got so many MOUs in place, we have not seen actual investment in the country. Now, what got me a bit more concerned is this. He recently came out with a statement saying that he wants GLICs, GLCs to invest back in Malaysia. What does it mean? It means that we do not have people coming into the country. Money is not coming in. So where else can we get the money or to stimulate the growth in the country, which is local GLCs? That is the reason why he asked for GLCs to put the money back in Malaysia, not to put it out there. Am I right? Did he say that? He said it recently. So that gives an additional understanding of why perhaps, yes, there is fiscal policies in place. They passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which I think it's a good start, but you still need to have a lot more improvement in that. But then again, we don't see the actual investment coming in yet.
Right.
We don't see it. And the fact that the Prime Minister is asking local GSTs to invest in Malaysia has got two particular problems with it. One is, if let's say KWSP, let's say, for point of debate, they start investing more in Malaysia, what is going to happen to your dividends? 60 or 70, I don't know the figures, but around that figure is invested internationally. That's why we have one of the best performing pension funds in the world. They give very good dividends, 5%, 5.3, very good dividends. But if that is, they have been forced to invest in Malaysia, example, if they're forced to invest in Malaysia, what happens to your dividend? It might drop because there's, how much growth can you get? Local banks are giving us 1 to 3%.
Surely they've also thought about this, but
Yeah, I'm sure,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm okay, but at least for C4 stands, because I understand what you're trying to highlight in terms of the whole ecosystem needs to be really seriously looked
Yeah.
into. But you know, you mentioned that the anti-corruption plan has been, you know, there since 2018, and we're in 2024. What is the, I suppose, obstacle here in terms of fully exercising this particular plan and ensuring that it seeps into our policies?
It's a question that all CSOs have been asking, but I think the logical answer, or the most obvious answer, is I think the lack of political will. Perhaps let me give you another example why there is lack of political will for some of the reforms. One of, or we call it the mother of all corruption, is political financing, meaning that you use funds to actually engage in political activities. And where the funds come from, it can come from corporate, it can come from individual, it can come from foundations. So you do not regulate where the money comes. That's where a high percentage of possibility of corruption seeping into the system, where a big corporation might give you, okay, I'll give you 10 million as a fund or as a donation, but when you are in power, you need to give me something in return. Maybe a project or something else. So that could be the arrangement. So political financing is where we control the money that's been going into political parties, so that there's less vote buying, less using of money to influence the votes, influence the election results. So that is where a lot of money is pumped into political parties, and a lot of corporates are involved. How do you control that? If you stop that, you control that, then the whole sphere of our election becomes a situation where we talk about policy, we talk about development. No longer what I can give you pocket money, I can give you this. No longer, it diverts the whole attention. So that is one of the reforms that we are pushing for political financing. But no politician from both sides of the divide are interested, because they have to declare who has been supporting them all this while, who are giving them money to run their operations.
Yeah.
So that eats into their interest and their benefit, so they don't want. But it's a benefit for all of us to have a system where everybody compete fairly in terms of policy, in terms of decision making, in terms of moving ahead, whereas now we have faced where money politics becomes a main issue. Yeah. So that's an example of how the political will is lacking. This new Indian government has actually come in and said a lot of good things. They've said, like, we want to do the Procurement Act, which we're also kind of pushing for, and we're quite heavily invested in that. Looking at the Freedom of Information Act as well. So there are positive movements from the government. They are looking at making changes. But I'm saying is, perhaps me being C4 a bit more urgency is quite, we need to move them faster. We need to push it across. We need to get all reform quickly done and push forward. The delaying part, I think, has been from 2018 to now. I think it's enough of years to do all the research, all the recommendations, all the stakeholder engagement. So now is the time, you are in power, you have the majority now, right? So let's get it done. Don't give excuse to anybody to criticize you anymore.
Right. And just to reiterate, the Political Financing Act here is one that's very much looked forward to in terms of being
correct.
passed
You're
in the
right.
bill. Okay. I also like to draw attention to bodies of authorities when it comes to our view in ensuring that the nation doesn't score so high in corruption. But unfortunately, in the past few weeks, if not years, it's just that lately it has been heightened. Our police force have been under fire for multiple corruption-related crimes. So the latest from the force is that they are expected to receive, more than 7,000 body-worn camera units, I suppose, as a step to combat all these illegalities. But I just want to understand from your point of view, in terms of accountability and transparency, like what role do these devices play Is it just one element that we should focus on?
I think it's not one element. I think there are a few factors you need to consider as well. First of all, if you look at specifically the camera thing that you mentioned earlier, so you have a bit of issue in terms of how to manage that as well. Now, I think it's good to have a camera to look at corruption issues and also abuse of power issues. Where there are illegal criminal activities, you abuse your power as a policeman, so to capture all the data. But my question to you is, even if you capture those data, who keeps those data? That's your first question, your first issue. Second issue, I'm not sure how the machine works. What if the officer switches it off? Then you have another two issues. One is, if it switches off, what do you do to the police officer? What kind of action or code of conduct you can use against the officer for switching off? So those are more logistical issues you need to worry about as well. But I'm more concerned about the data that we captured in the camera, who stores it and who holds it. That goes back to the issue of the independence of the police itself. And I have a problem now because the body that actually investigates all these criminal elements within the police department is under the IPCC, which is not what the country wanted. We wanted the IPCMC. It's basically a more thorough, more complete oversight mechanism that actually investigates police activities and criminalities. Now you have a situation where the police investigates themselves, and there's not much of investigative powers or punitive element. How do you actually investigate yourself? You can't. This brings to the issue of conflict of interest. We don't talk about conflict of interest enough in Malaysia to fight corruption. We hear it, we listen about it, we talk about it, you put in a big signboard, conflict of interest, but nobody talks about the implication and how it actually can be a big enabler for corruption. So in that context, you have a couple of issues to worry about in terms of that,
data
management, how you're going to hold it. And let's say, again, the issue of tampering, you hold that, if they record, they delete the data, you can't use it in court already. So how much does it actually help in terms of making the police force more accountable? We have to wait and see what are the mechanisms. So if this information is held independently and you must have allowed public access, then I think you will gain more confidence from the public. There is a massive trust deficit between the public and the police or any institution at this point in time.
When you mention public access, would you be able to explain further in that? Yeah.
Okay. Malaysia has got maybe it's a too strong word to use, a cultural identity where secrecy is a norm, especially in the public service department. Everything is OSA, chopped OSA. You can't get anything, okay? They wouldn't divulge any information, they were just quiet. So it's a culture that we see everywhere in our society. So the idea that access to information is where it's a key component of fighting corruption because it allows for transparency. So if you allow people to request information, to demand information, this police officer, this, I want their recording, it gives two things. One is you check the person that's doing illegal stuff because he knows his information can be shared to interest party. So he'll be more inclined to be more well-behaved.
Yep.
Second thing, you give confidence to the public that, look, information is available, I can check it, and if something wrong, I can take action. So there is strong elements there to provide for good accountability. So access to information is very important in Malaysian context. You need to have access to how procurement is done, what is the condition, who are the person bidding for the information. Of course, the details can be redacted, but then again, the key figures, the money, the quality of work. So this is where Malaysia lacks. That's why we are also part of the coalition now working to push for the Right to Information Act.
What is this coalition?
It's basically a coalition of a lot of CSOs.
I see.
So, and the government is, in this sense, is positive. They're actually looking at trying to push this act across so that people can have access to information. But of course, there's still a debate in terms of how much access, what kind of information. There also still going on debate or going on engagement. Yeah. But it's vital. Access to any form of information is vital.
Do you think that there should be more transparency to ensure trust back among the public? and among the enforcement?
Yeah, I think they should. I mean, they are good police officers. It's a good force. We have quite a decent and strong force. And I think sometimes when public statement comes out, you say we are taking action. But the question is, people ask them, okay, you took an action. What did you do? Have they ever mentioned, okay, this officer got caught doing this, what was his penalty? Did we remove him? Did we charge him? That information is lacking. So I think if you want to be transparent, you must also explain what are the steps, what's happening, what has happened, what is action they have taken, so people can feel, okay, there's actually, we can see the effects of our complaints, they see the effect of the issues. So people will be more confident that something has actually taken place.
Right.
You know, so that kind of transparency is important. That's why the independent oversight or investigative body to investigate police has to be independent from the police.
But so you would actually challenge IPCC's role in this? I mean, in terms of like
I wouldn't
investigating internal affairs stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't challenge IPCC as an institution. I'm challenging the context and the role it's supposed to play. It doesn't have enough bite. It doesn't have enough strength or clout to do proper work. For example, I think even the right to call for investigation is limited. So you need strong powers. For example, MACC, the power that they have is very strong. I can freeze your account. I can go into your office and take your documents. Those are investigative powers that are powerful. So something similar has to be available. And then again, you have police officers investigating police officers. That is a conflict of interest.
Speaking of MACC, are you alluding to the Act, the 36? 36
okay, 36 is basically reference to, your wealth.
Right.
Accumulation of wealth. So they're using that again, I think, dime at this point in time.
Right.
Yeah.
But they do have the right to compel. I mean, they have that privilege, right?
It's debatable. I can't go into the legal context of it in terms of, but they're using that against dime to actually compel him to declare all his assets.
Right.
So in that sense, I think there are enough information or act power for MSC to act. But I think we're going to a different topic now.
Sure. For the police, perhaps, do we need something of that sort of an enactment, a new enactment, or an amendment to an existing
power
act,
IPCC,
where we can have these oversight bodies, oversight committees to compel the police to open an investigation?
We should. That's why we want to go back to the IPCMC. The problem is this, that the issue is independence, one. The power to investigate is one component, but the independence of it is more important. We cannot have police officers investigating police officers. It has something independent. More maybe CSOs, bar council, anybody that's more independent, they're able to give an independent assessment of a current situation. Police among themselves have got a camaraderie. You don't want to disrupt the camaraderie as well. So let an independent body investigate them. So that's the push that you want to push through.
Right.
So in that context, I think the IPCC is not sufficient to actually handle this, and it won't give much confidence, in my opinion, to the public.
Right.
More has to be done.
Yeah.
More has to be done.
Hazim, maybe if you have one question left for our guests, can we lay them across?
So earlier you spoke of how there's the problem isn't just, first we have to make sure that the definition is expanded. Corruption should be expanded to beyond just bribes, and we also have to address the scale on which the corruption is happening in Malaysia. So if we start seeing the reforms that you spoke of, number one, are we going to see smaller? Do we measure that as a success if we start seeing corruption on a smaller scale? Is that one measure of success at least?
Okay. No, I think we have to be very clear in terms of C4's concern. Both petty and grand are significantly important for us, because petty corruption affects a person's right, justice. If let's say a person tampers the evidence, so where is your right to justice? So those are things also important. But in terms of national economic development, for example, the grand corruption become a focal point because a lot of money is floated throughout the system in terms of large amount of money. Billions and billions of money is going out. So if we have all those reforms in place, it will address both.
Right.
It will address both. And I think it will give significant confidence for public, CSOs, the enforcement agencies, and the international community to understand that there are concrete steps in place, this is going to happen, and the confidence will come in. The confidence will definitely come in.
Just quickly for our audience knowledge, if they are not necessarily clear of the reforms, if you want to list them out very briefly. Maybe
okay.
A brief one,
yeah.
Maybe,
the immediate ones, I suppose.
Okay, I think you have to look at the independence of MACC. That's one, the key one. Look at separation of AG and PP. You have to look at the whistleblower amendments, the Procurement Act. You have to look at the Right to Information Act as well. Ombudsman to actually monitor civil servants. IPCC need upgrade as well. So those are some of the things I think on top of my mind. But believe me, there's a lot more reforms we need to talk about, put in place that should go forward. A lot of things. But those are a few key ones I think we have to immediately start talking, getting the discourse out there to get it done.
Right. Okay, certainly this fight against corruption does not end today, it will not end tomorrow, or even if our score does improve, I don't think it will be ending. It's a continuous fight. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the show. I would just like to thank panel here first. Pushpan, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Headlines. We wish to have you here back on the set next time. Hazrin.
Always a pleasure, Amalina. Thank you.
And thank you so much for having me as well.
Yes. So to our audience back at home, if you do like this particular episode, like, subscribe, share, and comment. Do follow us on our social media platforms, NST Online, Facebook, Instagram, X, as well as Twitter. My name is Amalina Kamal. I'll see you next time.